Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Demon's Crest. In the last part we started off the game as well as got our Ground Gargoyle transformation, and now we're in the Reservoir just to the right of town. Also, fun fact, you can just move those statues with the charge for the Ground Gargoyle, which I guess is there so you can move some of them out of your way. You only have to move one of them out of them all, so it's kind of an odd thing to incorporate the idea just for one, but I guess you can move others if you want to. Now, there's actually items on this screen I could feasibly get right now. Well, feasibly, rather. But it's not worth it because they're in the water. And if Firebrand enters the water, he takes damage. It's not an instant kill like it is for the Belmonts, but he does slowly take damage like Alucard in Symphony of the Night. So we're instead going to move over here to the Catacombs, which... not an area I'm too fond of, honestly. Great music, though. Mind you, I forget if I mentioned this last part, but Demon's Crest soundtrack is the best out of the trilogy. Because it just sounds so good. Mind you, it's unfair to compare a Game Boy game with a Super Nintendo game, because my god, the sound chip could do wonders, but they did really good here. It's actually really good to be the Ground Gargoyle for as long as possible here, because as I mentioned last part, towards the end, the shot for the Gargoyle, the one that goes down towards the ground when you're on the ground, does double the damage of the one that Firebrand normally does. So it's just good to be standing as Ground Gargoyle a lot around here. At least for this room, because the way that this game's areas work, more often than not, like the Reservoir is one of the few times it doesn't, is that each area has different rooms, and each room is in of itself another checkpoint. So right now, I just made a checkpoint, so if I die, I can respawn here with the retry option. And I should mention, when you do die, the return to stage select thing is actually just a return to the world map, because this game doesn't have an outright stage select. Either way, this room is pretty interesting in the fact that it's very important for you to keep the torches alit, just so you can see what's going on in terms of platforming around you. The ghosts that show up like that one, though, will go towards the nearest fire and eat it, strangely enough, which would put it out. However, thankfully, you don't need the lights to be on in order to enter the door in this room. It's right here. But it's now time for our next boss, which is that giant green thing beneath us. This is Ovnunu. Ovnunu? I don't know how to pronounce it. And I'll say right off, this is a pretty annoying boss fight. Also, slow down. This game's full of it. Honestly, I'd say it's one of the most slowdown prone Super Nintendo games I've ever played. Good recommendation is to get the Ground Gargoyle out and head towards the top right or top left. Doesn't matter which, just be on one of the platforms. Ovnunu starts off by sending out all those other eyeballs that are in that little green gelatin thing. They either take, I think it's 2 ground shots or 3 or 4 jumping shots. You want to use the ground shots as much as possible, though, just to keep things much more easy for you. This can actually be a pretty tough boss your first time around, because you're getting overwhelmed by the amount of eyeballs around you, so watch out, but don't feel bad if you take too much damage, because it happens. Honestly, if it was possible, I would actually recommend fighting this boss later on, but in this game's case, it's not possible for you to fight this guy later on, as far as I can recall. I think. Actually, wait, I might be wrong about that, actually, because I forget what unlocks the next stage set. Once you get rid of all the eyeballs, the boss fight actually starts against Ovnunu himself in there. And Ovnunu is annoying. First off, he's huge and actually has some decent flying speed to him. For the most part, he just tries to injure you by inflicting touch damage, but every now and then he will shoot what I'm assuming is either some sort of tendril or acid out of his eyeball, which looks really gross, the way that his eyeball opens up, by the way. And you really just want to avoid touching him. A good way to damage him, yet again, is by using ground shots with the Ground Gargoyle, which can take a while to get the right trajectories on, but it does so well against him. Also, yeah, if I die, I'm cutting back to usually around the same amount of damage I've done to the boss. And after beating him, we get something interesting. This is, as soon as I get it, the piece of the fire crest called Buster. With it, we can break through stone. It's basically the Magic Buster from the first 2 games. The way that the lore explains what's going on there is that, I think Phalanx did it. The Fire Crest has been broken up into 5 pieces. So in order to get that crest, we need to get all the pieces back for it. And the Fire Crests are essentially your breath abilities from the previous games. We start off with the normal file, now we got Magic Buster, and we're going to be getting some familiar ones as we go through. And Buster is just Magic Buster once again. Higher rapid fire than the originals, than the normal breath like in the other 2 games, so it's honestly preferable just due to that. And it can break stone blocks, which is very useful, particularly here in the 3rd screen of the outside of the Coliseum area, because we can break these blocks in order to get, I believe it's a life extension? Also, if it's not entirely obvious by the fact that it just broke 3 rows, this game considers Firebrand to be 3 tiles tall, so in order to get through things like that, you need to break 3 rows of tiles. Also, I recommend just having the Buster on for the most part from here on, because its higher rapid fire assists against boss fights. But since we have Buster, we can now also access the last shop in this area. I know I haven't been in any of them. In fact, there's one I don't think I'm ever going in. But the one that we can now enter is the potion shop on the top right of the town. This is going to be your best friend in the game. And by the way, you open these doors by headbutting them first. The potion shop sells 5 things, each of which you need one of the vials, like the one I found in the first level, to store. The mercury teleports you back to the beginning of a level, the sulfur teleports you back to the overworld, an herb restores 5 health, an elixir is basically a revive, it revives you from death with 4 health, very useful, and the ginseng is the most useful but also most expensive since it restores your health to full. After doing some, I believe, minor health grinding or deciding what I was going to buy, I'm taking an elixir with me. Elixirs are only really useful during the main game though, because there's one thing later on that ginsengs are just purely better for. Just due to the amount of health you'll have by that point. By the way, let's check something else out in town. Let's talk to the hobo again. Hey you! I haven't seen you around here before. You a stranger here? Nah. Did you hear that the red demon Firebrand escaped from the Coliseum? I heard that General Arm was hiding him down. Yes, he is. Hey you, I haven't seen you around. Are you a stranger here? Yeah. They say the red demon has noticed Firebrand has risen. He nearly burnt the demon realm to ashes years ago. The Phalanx hadn't rescued us. We'd all be dead thanks to that arrogant fool Firebrand. Take care of yourself. I'm still trying to figure out if this is a sequel to the first game or a second game. I think this is supposed to be the Firebrand from Demon's Crest, from Gargoyle's Quest 1, though. Either way, now we need to head back to the Catacombs, because now that we have the Buster, we can access a few things. Like, first off, our second Vellum is here. I'll go over what Vellums do later on in the part, if I recall. And now, later on in the second area of the Catacombs, you may have seen earlier there was a bunch of Buster blocks to the left coming up. As soon as I can get this place lit up, just because I like to see what I'm doing. There's obviously going to be an item behind at least one of these, and it's this one. And it's a life extension! And with that, we are done in the Catacombs forever. We never need to come back here. However, if you were paying attention on the world map, you can actually press the start button to access like a map of the overworld. And you might notice that we still only, if I recall, have the Coliseum level that we started off with, and the town is considered a level as well, level 2. The thing is, the way that the boss progression works in this game is that you need to beat one of the bosses every level has. A particular one at that. In this case, we need to beat the one that you get completely by just moving forwards. Because if we actually head right from where the Catacombs entrance is, we actually enter a new area. So we need to head over there. At least I think that's the boss that triggers new levels to open up. I forget, honestly. It's a pretty annoying boss either way. It's also why I recommend getting the Elixir over the Ginseng at this point, because let's just say you want to save money on this case. Welcome to the Boneyard, which just straight out graveyard. Notable though, you can break, I guess, these coffins or mausoleums or whatever with your dash, so make sure to take advantage of that. Those hands do not damage you, they're only there to keep you in place for a bit, so that the demons throwing skulls can damage you. However, similarly to the catacomb things, you can destroy them with the dash. And you want to do this to one of them, because one of them contains an item for us. I believe it's the one on the top left here. Yes, it is. That's another life extension. Also, that enemy I just tried to kill, that armored flying guy, I think you can only damage him at this point with the Buster, because the Buster will break the armor, then you can actually attack the guy himself underneath it. Notable, every gargoyle form we're going to be getting has some disadvantage to them. Like in the case of the Ground Gargoyle, he can't fly, obviously. Either way, time for the Boneyard's boss fight, which honestly is one of the more annoying ones in the game. This is Belth. And Belth is annoying. He only takes about 8 Ground Gargoyle shots, but it's the fact that he's very aggressive and he's constantly heading towards you that makes him annoying. Recommendable, supposedly, is just jumping over him with normal Firebrand and flying over him. But he can just do a lot of damage just trying to touch you. Plus, I think he does more than 1 damage per shot. He's very hard to dodge at this point, but thankfully he drops a life extension for us, and now we can move on from that area. We never need to... Well, actually, no. For completion's sake, I will need to head back into these stages, but I never need to head back into the Boneyard area itself. Either way, there's one thing I have not shown off here that's pretty important in this town, and that's this. As soon as I get past the hobo guy. Notice these vellums that we've been collecting? You use them in here. This is the magic shop. Basically, the vellums are like the vials. You store spells on them. That's what the spells do. Shadow basically is supposed to increase Firebrand's defense, but it's nowhere near useful enough. Hold stuns certain enemies, not useful at all. Imp is actually fairly useful, but it has a thing to it. Basically, you summon an imp to fight you. However, it's the 25 to buy it. Then, whenever the imp is out, it's an additional GP per rough second. So basically, you have an additional fee to it. Shock creates an earthquake that damages enemies on the ground, roughly. Not too useful. And Death is probably the most useful spell out of all of them, which deals mass damage to enemies on screen, which can be useful in a pinch. However, spells overall in this game are not that useful. Thus, I'm sadly not going to be using many, if any of them, throughout this LP. Now, if you want to experiment around with them, go ahead. It's just not my thing. Either way, with that, we're now going to be heading up here towards level 3, which is in this forest. Which, honestly, this kind of is like Mega Man X a bit, because it's Sting Chameleon. Huh. Either way, you're going to be noticing there's a lot of these little vines blocking your ways in certain parts of this level. You cannot break those yet. There's also a blocked door in here, but even if you can get to it, don't go into it, because we can't really do anything of worth in there without having another ability. However, one thing I am going to be getting now, there's a vial over there. You're supposed to have the ability to be able to break these vines to get it, but if you're smart, you can just take a hit and while climbing up there. So, technically sequence breaking there, but not much of a sequence to break. Oh, and hey, it's the platforms from Demon's Crest 2. How I hate you. Thankfully, this time, since I have infinite flight, I could just say screw you and fly over them. I really do hate these things. I think this is the only level they appear into. Either way, once we reach the third part of the forest is where the gimmick starts to kick in. It's a fire level. Not what I would expect, but okay. Although, actually, this does kind of remind me of burning down Slash Man stage in Mega Man 7. And Zero in the forest stages in Zero 2. Either way, this seems annoying, and in fact, early on, the weird things falling from the sky that cause a bunch of fire to spurt out are a bit annoying. But overall, I think the stage is actually a bit easier once you get here. Because there aren't as many enemies in your pathway. For the most part, it's either this guy, or those weird little talon things coming out of the ground. But important for us is to break into here. Because this blocked door has something important for us. In here is that thing on the bottom right. This is a talisman. This is the skull talisman in particular. Talismans are at the bottom row of items first off. They're basically little upgrades that influence stuff that happens. The skull talisman that I got there increases the chance of enemies and pots dropping health. Not the most useful crest, but the first one you can get, so obviously I'm gonna get it. You do need all the crests to get the true ending, by the way, because this is one of those games that has a different ending for 100%. I'll go over all the different endings later. But it is time for our boss fight, and it's actually the thing that set this entire place on fire. It has the plainest name of all time, the Flame Lord. This is a very easy boss. He tends to just use those birds to attack in his first phase, or dash over him like towards you as a little lion thing. That dash attack's the most annoying thing it has, because it's kind of hard to dodge that. But if you're smart with the Ground Gargoyle, you can kill it really quickly, in which case it enters phase 2, where it's a giant floating fire skull. This is still very weak to the Ground Gargoyle shot, but you need to be a bit trickier as to how you're hitting him because of his much more wavy patterns. And that's the Elixir kicking in. I should mention you do need to equip a vial for it to take effect. So in that case, say if I didn't have the Elixir equipped from the pause screen, like you can see it is on the top right with that bottle, I would not have gotten revived there. Flame Lord can be a fairly annoying boss on your first playthrough, but honestly, it's pretty simple. And beating it rather drops a fairly familiar ability to people who play Demon's Crest. To people who play Gargoyle's Quest 2, we got the piece of the Fire Crest called Tornado. With it, we can jump higher than before. It's the magic tornado back from the second game. Basically, and I'll show this off next part, you can make 2 temporary platforms at a time. Not too useful in this game's case, though, because of a certain upgrade we'll be getting later on. Either way, welcome to one of the game's mini-games. It has been a long time since a customer visited my shop. Welcome to the shop of Trio the Pago. We specialize in gaming for show. This is level 3 and is somewhat hard. The entrance fee is 20 GP. You seem to be very good at headbutts. I'll invite you to test your skill. This is based... there's a lot of these. There's a few of these throughout the world, but this is the only one that's worth going to. Basically, you need to time your headbutts while jumping in order to break 25 skulls. Doing so in the 30-second time limit, if I recall, nets you a life extension. However, I'm only trying this now. I succeeded in it later on. I just wanted to show you that if you want to get the life extension here, you can. I recommend finding and practicing on the other Pago shops, though, just so you can have more time with it, and bigger obstacles. Bigger things to hit, rather. In terms of where the other 2 are, because there are 3 of these, the first one's a location tile, which you can find, I think it's like a house. The second one's a forest tile on a small island, and this is the third one, obviously. By the way, your time is shown by the torches on the top right. I tried this again later on, so I'll get that life extension later on. So if you get it now, you'll probably have one more than me for a while. But with that, I'm going to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 3, we will be heading into some new levels and getting some more power-ups in the process. See you guys then.